the sidewalk grant was because that someone didn't build the sidewalk. And we stayed in line and harped the DOT, and we got the money for the sidewalks. But I remember sitting in on a task force that looked into workforce housing, and many hours were spent by people in this town outlining what it should and shouldn't be, and the NRPC was there, and all of a sudden they said, oh, no, we can't do it that way. It has to be done a certain way. So it works both ways. No matter if we put the time in, we find ourselves working under the NRPC, and then they come back and say, sorry, we couldn't do it that way. So it works both ways.
It was put out to bids, and they didn't get the bid.
What's that?
The contract for the workforce housing, to write the contract.
Well, no, because we were at RMMS, and there was a gentleman there that was facilitating it, and I was there one evening or 2 evenings working on it, trying to figure out, you know, how it was going to look like, and what the designs of the buildings where it should be, and how it should be laid out, and where and what part of the towns. And all of a sudden they came back and said that was all for naught because that wasn't allowable.
No, I was on the committee, and I was at all the meetings, and it went out for bid, and the bid was given to Moran after we asked NRPC to write the application for us.
So I appreciate all the hard work and effort that you all put into this. It was a foregone conclusion before we got here, because there was a conversation overheard with you and John in the hallway several weeks back, talking about not allowing the money to go forward. Just was kind of waiting for when the axe was going to fall. So I knew it was motivated on something other than supporting, letting you all develop the ideas, put the facts down, and let us go into this with eyes wide open. And as I've told you all, it's really a disservice to the town, because as private citizens, you can still draft that ordinance, submit it to the planning board, and it'll come up for vote. And just like my good esteemed colleague Jack said, people just always vote yes on them.
That's right.
The only thing that we're missing is the luxury of getting professional help. So that's the only thing that this has done. So, with respect to the mixed use, but I agree with the comments about volunteerism. It was literally a disservice to you all. And the fact that we applied for something. Granted, somebody else might have gotten it, but we kind of went pretty far down the road to get to the point where we're signing it to say, no, when you knew, Jack, you knew weeks ago you were going to do this.
What's that?
That you were not going to, that you were going to pull the funding for this. You were not going to go for it.
Jack,
you were overheard in the hallway.
We could have done it last week. We could have done it last week.
4 weeks ago.
But you know something too, is the wording of this committee was not what I originally thought it was. It was to bring back information before we insist. But the wording of the charge was to immediately push it through an ordinance. I never would have supported that. But that's, I let you finish.
Okay.
I let you finish. The other thing is, you know, like I said to you many, many times, whether it be in the hallway or here, is there's absolutely no benefit for the town, from a financial standpoint, to have mixed use, because it's not going to change our tax rate. What it's really going to do is impact people who live on Route 130, because if they don't sell their homes to someone who may convert it into a mixed use property, they'll have traffic issues, they will have dumpster issues, they'll have noise issues, and to be honest with you, I can understand why groups of people don't want this. So, there's no tax benefit, the people on the road don't like it, and the reality is, I like the way Brookline looks. So, if you want to fault me for standing up for the way I feel, so be it. But it was wrong from the beginning, and I still think it's wrong now.
So you said groups of people don't want it, you didn't say all people don't want it, so that implies groups of people do want it. And in a democracy,
sure,
you generally let the ideas evolve, get the facts out there, and let folks make an informed decision. So now we're going to resort to less than an informed decision.
Well, tell me the benefits.
Less than, don't know, Jack. I was going to wait to see what they came up with to say, what are the options, because one of the things since we chartered this committee that they did, and I thought was brilliant, rather than saying, groups of people don't want it, and taking a minority and applying to the whole, they said, well, gee, let's chunk this thing out. There's 3 different personalities of residents along Route 130, so let's treat them all differently, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. So you can have a section where folks don't want it, a section where folks might be mixed, and a section where they do want it. So they kind of laid it out, thought very well about it.
Ronnie, I find it really sad that a person that represents this town and other towns in Concord as a representative would sit at this meeting and multiple times have said, I did not read the document that he signed. And what was it, a page or two? And he didn't read the document before he signed it for the charter? I find that real sad. I have to ask, what kind of representation do we have in Concord? I have to.
Geez, Ron, you know, when you have a discussion amongst colleagues and the understanding of the meeting was a certain thing, and then it gets memorialized in another draft, you do realize the number of documents that we read and sign, whether it be here or even in Concord. So there's an underlying assumption, but you know, you're right. I'm not gonna trust anybody who puts a piece of paper in front of me from here on in, and I will read everything that comes in. Normally, I would have just trusted them for whatever, but you know something, Ron? I said, that's so out of line, it's pathetic.
You said that multiple times that you didn't read a one-page document.
Exactly, that wasn't my understanding of what our charter was.
Okay. Dennis?
Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay. I just wanted to ask John, have you ever heard of the term natural capitalism before? Okay, this is something, a study that's been going on in local communities all throughout the country that are trying to reestablish themselves because most of the jobs in the United States are going offshore. You know, I've published a paper yesterday. We have $74 trillion in debt in the federal government right now, with no way to pay it back. The economies will have to look internal. So I don't know what America is going to happen, whether it's going to be what it was in 1980 or last year. But I know it's going to change because these jobs that have left are not coming back. Okay, and that's my lifetime. Okay, so, and I believe that. That's my belief. Okay, whatever conspiracy there is out there from a United Nations, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about what's happening in America. And if we don't start something for local and trade and commerce with one another, local currencies, these things are real and they're happening. Because right now, we don't have a gold standard, but people are buying gold like crazy. Because the Federal Reserve has failed us. It's failed us. We are, the United States is bankrupt. So how can you propose that we can't do anything for trying to find how to turn the economy over again? We need to flip it here locally because it's not going to come to us. So again, I wouldn't disband the committee, but a grant would have been nice to have some expertise involved. That's what I would say. But
when it comes to the grants,
search Google that.
or actually the mixed use area, I'm not sure whether I'm for or against it. But without the grant and without the knowledge that these people were going to bring forward, I wouldn't be able to make a conscious and good, clear decision. What they were bringing to us was a written document that people then look at and say, at the end of the day, this is what it's going to look like. At that point, I felt I could vote and give my recommendations fairly. Right now, I'm going to just kind of go through it blind, because if they continue forward, they're going to come up with maybe nothing against the committee, but a less than perfectly written document or less than a user-friendly document. And that's my concern. I felt that when I was put in this position, it was for me to bring the ideas and the opportunity to vote to the people with as much knowledge as possible. We are not doing that.
Yeah, I'm not going to vote to disband the committee. If the committee wants to go ahead and work on their own and present something to the voters in March, that's perfectly all right.
Well, but the charter says that they come and bring stuff back to us. If I was sitting out there in that committee, I wouldn't want to walk in this room and talk to anybody with respect to that charter.
That's your
After I
privilege.
worked all of these months.
Peter Cook was just here, was it last week or the week before? We were establishing, what was the chart that he was on that met for 2 or 3 weeks and all of a sudden it just went away?
Municipal records.
Thank you.
But, you know, I
That
think
had a shorter lifespan, I think, from the beginning.
in many towns, new ordinances come under the purview of the planning board. By disbanding this committee that was officially and technically set up by the Board of Selectmen, I think it opens the door for the planning board to form a committee to go about this if they so choose.
Or any citizen present them with a draft
Absolutely.
ordinance to take through the process.
Which actually reaffirms what I was saying, is that we're not the planning board. As far as developing ordinances, for me, it was a fact-finding committee. That was all my interpretation was, so.
Are you a committee of one, or
No.
do you have
No, there's about a dozen people on the committee,
a dozen?
something like that. Some people are more regular attendees at the meetings. Some people I haven't seen in quite a while. But, you know, we haven't met here this last few months because we've been going through the grant process. But the selectmen, you know, appointed somewhere around 10 or 12 people onto the committee. And originally we were actually two committees, one that met in the morning and one that met in the evenings. But we consolidated.
Okay, are we ready to vote on it? Motion is to disband the mixed-use committee.
So if we don't disband them, what are we gonna have them do?
They'll terminate their job.
No, no.
I
well,
said,
by-
if we
that's
don't
what-
terminate them.
If we don't disband it, we basically said, cease and desist what we charged you to do. So we're good as having a mixed-use zoning committee.
It reports back to this board.
Well, that's
Yeah.
not waiting to report again until March.
Or maybe they can convince us that it's a good idea.
Okay.
All those in favor, raise the right hand.
All the way loud. Of disbanding it?
All those
Opposed?
opposed?
So it's disbanding. At least I put a motion out that had the balls to state the facts of how I felt now, rather than wasting their time to jerk the rug out from under them again later. That was a 5-letter word, not a 4-letter.
Okay. Next on the agenda is